During the holidays, I prefer to escape the bustling city where the partygoers celebrate. Nestled in the heart of a dense forest, my mind and body find peace. The stars above seem to twinkle with an almost mystical power, guiding me towards something I can't quite define. Of course, there are pesky mosquitoes buzzing around, but even they become part of the symphony of nature. This is how I find solace during the holiday season. Well, still, I must admit that I feel a bit anxious as the year draws to a close and the new one begins. I hope for nothing but smooth sailing. Stay safe always.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to take a look at five pretty critical issues facing Indonesia in 2024.
Right.
And we're going to be using some reports from the Indonesian parliament as kind of our jumping off point here.
Sounds good.
We're going to look at the economy and gender inequality.
Okay.
The rise of online gambling, which has become a really serious issue.
Yeah.
Tensions in the Taiwan Strait, and Indonesia's plan to retire all of its coal-fired power plants and transition to renewable energy.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. So buckle up, because we're going to be diving into some pretty in-depth statistics and insights into what's really shaping Indonesia's future.
You know, one thing I find fascinating about all these issues is that they're all kind of interconnected in a way.
Yeah.
Both within Indonesia and on a global scale. It's really quite interesting.
Okay, so let's start with the economy.
Right.
It seems like a little bit of a paradox because, projections say the economy is going to grow, but there's some real weaknesses underneath.
Yeah, you're right. The Indonesian economy is projected to grow at 5.15% in 2025. But the thing is, household consumption, which makes up more than half of Indonesia's GDP, is weakening.
Right.
So in the third quarter of 2024, household consumption growth slowed to just 4.91%.
So if people aren't spending as much, what is actually driving that growth, that projected growth?
Well, there's a few things at play.
Okay.
One is a strengthening rupiah.
Okay.
That's attracting investments, both direct and portfolio investments, and also lower loan costs are also helping encourage investment, particularly in small and medium enterprises.
Okay.
But the biggest factor is probably the government's focus on what they call hilirisasi minerba, which is downstream processing of minerals and coal.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about that.
So essentially what it means is instead of just exporting raw materials,
Okay.
they're processing them domestically, adding value to their exports.
Yeah.
Creating more jobs.
Right.
And the nickel sector is really a prime example of that. So projections show that nickel downstream processing could contribute U.S. $14.2 million to GDP,
Wow.
create 169,000 new jobs, attract U.S. $42.5 million in investments, and boost exports by U.S. $32.1 million.
That's huge.
It's a big shift in economic strategy.
It sounds like it's a real game changer for the Indonesian economy.
Absolutely, it is. And I think it reflects a broader trend we're seeing in Indonesia, where they're really trying to move up the value chain and become a more significant player in the global economy.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about gender inequality and violence against women.
Okay.
This continues to be a major problem in Indonesia.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's true. Violence against women remains very high. And the data from the National Commission on Violence Against Women shows 289,111 reported cases just in 2023.
Wow, and that's just the reported cases, right?
Exactly. And data from Symphony PPA, which is a system that tracks violence against women and children, recorded 25,375 cases just between January 1 and December 10th of 2024.
Wow.
And what's interesting is the female victims outnumber the male victims by a lot.
Really?
Yeah, it's like 21,990 female victims versus 5,540 male victims.
It's very disheartening to hear those numbers. Where is most of this violence taking place?
So sadly, a lot of it is happening at home.
In the home?
Yeah. And the 2024 National Women's Life Experience Survey showed that 1 in 4 women between the ages of 15 and 64 have experienced physical or sexual violence at some point.
Wow.
And even more concerning is 1 in 5 reported experiencing domestic violence just in the past year.
It's shocking that this is still such a problem. What are the main factors that are contributing to this?
Well, I think the key driver here is gender inequality.
Okay.
It's just deeply ingrained in many aspects of Indonesian society.
Yeah.
You know, we see things like patriarchal cultural norms, a lack of education about women's rights, and often just weak law enforcement when it comes to these kinds of cases.
Right.
And to make matters worse, a lot of these cases are resolved outside the judicial system, you know, through customary mechanisms that don't always deliver justice.
It sounds like to fix this is going to take a really fundamental shift in societal attitudes.
It really does. It's going to take a multi-pronged approach that includes education, legal reforms, and stronger institutions to protect women and ensure their rights. But it also requires changing deeply rooted cultural norms and empowering women in all aspects of society.
Okay, let's move on to a problem that's been making a lot of headlines lately, and that is the rise of online gambling.
Right.
In Indonesia,
Mm-hmm.
this has become a really serious issue, hasn't it?
It really has. Online gambling is having just a devastating impact on individuals, families, and the economy as a whole.
Yeah.
And, by March of 2024, it was estimated that online gambling had already cost the nation Rp 600 trillion,
Wow.
which is more than the entire 2024 budget for national priority programs.
That's mind-boggling what makes it so destructive.
Well, the consequences are multifaceted.
Okay.
Economically, you see people going into severe debt because they're using online loans to fuel their gambling habits. Psychologically, it can lead to addiction, stress, anxiety, and often desperate behavior.
Right.
And then socially, it results in reduced productivity, isolation, damage to relationships, and sometimes a rise in criminal activity.
Are there any statistics that kind of highlight those impacts?
Yeah, so in 2023, Indonesia saw a 32% increase in divorce cases compared to the year before.
Okay.
And a big part of that was attributed to online gambling.
It's really tearing families apart.
Yeah, it's a complex problem that requires a very comprehensive response.
Yeah.
We need stricter law enforcement that's targeting the operators and the promoters of these sites,
Okay.
public awareness campaigns to educate people about the dangers,
Right.
and maybe even restricting access, through things like limiting prepaid SIM card sales so it's harder to create anonymous accounts.
Okay.
And of course, tackling the financial side by blocking funds through better coordination between the agencies so the money can't flow
Right.
to these illegal operations. Technology can also play a role, AI, and big data can be used to detect and prevent gambling activities as well.
Interesting. So really a multifaceted approach.
Yeah, for sure.
Now let's shift our focus to the growing tension in the Taiwan Strait.
Okay.
This obviously has implications for the entire region, including Indonesia.
Yeah, the Taiwan Strait's a potential flashpoint that could have a huge impact on global stability.
Right. Can you just give us a really brief timeline of the recent events?
Sure. So in late November of 2024,
Okay.
the U.S. approved a U.S. $385 million arms sale to Taiwan, including parts for F-16 fighter jets and radar systems.
Okay.
And then China responded with sanctions against U.S. defense companies in early December.
Right.
And then shortly after that, Taiwan actually raised its alert level because they detected almost 90 Chinese warships and Coast Guard vessels near the island.
Wow.
So tensions are definitely escalating.
Yeah, it sounds like both sides are bolstering their military.
Absolutely. Taiwan has increased its defense budget to U.S. $19.74 billion, which is 2.5% of its GDP. And they've extended mandatory military service to a full year now, so they're clearly getting ready.
Yeah, and adding to all of this is the potential return of Donald Trump to the U.S. presidency.
Right.
His foreign policy is notoriously unpredictable.
It really is. And his approach to Taiwan has always been kind of inconsistent.
Yeah.
He's criticized Taiwan for not spending enough on defense.
Right.
And even suggested that they should pay the U.S. for protection.
Wow.
He's also accused them of stealing U.S. semiconductor technology.
Right.
But then during his first term, oversaw the largest arms sales to Taiwan in history, totaling over U.S. $15 billion.
It's hard to predict what he'll do.
It really is.
And that uncertainty just adds to the tension.
Absolutely it does. And any conflict in the Taiwan Strait would have really serious consequences for Indonesia.
Yeah.
Just given its proximity, its economic ties, and the 300,000 Indonesian nationals that live in Taiwan.
It's a lot at stake.
Yeah.
Okay, last topic for this part. Indonesia's ambitious plan to retire its coal-fired power plants and transition to renewable energy.
Huge undertaking.
It is huge.
Yeah, right.
It's crucial, though, for the country's future.
It is. The goal is to retire all fossil fuel plants gradually and add 75 GW of renewable energy over the next 15 years.
That's a lot.
It's ambitious.
So where does Indonesia stand now, and what are some of the biggest hurdles?
Well, the big challenge is that right now, coal accounts for 60% of Indonesia's electricity.
Wow.
And renewable energy is only at 12.99%.
So what are the main things that they need to overcome to get to that ambitious goal?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is the cost.
Okay.
It's estimated that retiring all coal plants by 2050 will cost around Rp 444 trillion.
Wow.
plus another U.S. $235 billion needed for investment in renewable energy infrastructure by 2040.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And then there's also regulatory hurdles.
Okay.
So current regulations still allow new coal plants to be built in industrial areas.
Oh, wow.
And there are concerns about legal risks and potential state losses associated with the early retirement of those plants.
Right.
And this is creating uncertainty for investors. Yeah.
And to make things even more complicated, the roadmap for PLTU retirement is still being developed.
Okay.
And a comprehensive renewable energy law hasn't even been passed yet.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
So they've set themselves a very challenging but necessary goal.
Definitely.
This transition is going to require overcoming major financial and regulatory and logistical obstacles.
It's going to be complex, but it's a crucial step
Yeah.
for Indonesia's sustainable development and its contribution to the global efforts to combat climate change.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive,
We have.
exploring those 5 key issues facing Indonesia. In the next part, we're going to delve a little deeper into some potential solutions and talk about how the Indonesian parliament can really shape the country's future.
All right, sounds good. So we've explored some pretty significant challenges facing Indonesia, right? Ranging from, economic weaknesses to social issues, geopolitical tensions, and then the whole complexity of transitioning to a more sustainable energy future.
Yeah, it seems like Indonesia's really at a crossroads here. It does, doesn't it? They're facing some pretty critical decisions that are going to shape their trajectory for years to come.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important now is to kind of examine, okay, what are the potential solutions? What are the pathways forward?
Okay.
And one thing that keeps coming up in all these issues is the need for strong governance and effective policy implementation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have the greatest policies in the world,
Exactly.
but if they're not implemented well, or if they're undermined by corruption or bureaucratic inefficiencies,
Right.
then they're not going to achieve anything.
Exactly. Strengthening institutions, promoting transparency and accountability, and just ensuring good governance. That's really the foundation for addressing any of these challenges.
And that's where the Indonesian parliament, the DPR RI, comes in, right?
Exactly.
They have the power to hold the government accountable and make sure that these policies are actually implemented.
That's right. They have a significant oversight role. They scrutinize government actions, they push for legislative changes, and they monitor the implementation of policies to make sure they're actually making a difference on the ground.
Let's dive into some specific recommendations and potential solutions.
Okay.
Starting with the economy. We know household consumption is weak. That's a major concern.
Right.
What can be done to kind of boost spending power and stimulate growth?
So the reports from the DPR RI really emphasize the need for policies that directly support household consumption.
Okay.
So things like targeted tax breaks for lower and middle income families, strengthening the social safety net to kind of provide a cushion for those who need it most,
Okay.
and implementing effective strategies to control inflation, especially for essential goods like food.
So putting more money in people's pockets and making sure the money goes further.
Exactly. But it's not just about domestic policies.
Right.
Indonesia also needs to think strategically about how to mitigate the impact of global economic headwinds.
Right, because they can't control what's happening in the global economy,
Exactly.
but they can control how they respond to it.
Right. So diversifying their economy is key. Reducing reliance on a single market or a single commodity that can help buffer them from global shocks.
Okay.
They also need to focus on fostering innovation and entrepreneurship, creating a more dynamic and competitive domestic economy.
So becoming more self-reliant and less vulnerable to those external forces.
Exactly. And this ties back to the potential of downstream processing that we talked about.
Right.
By developing the capacity to process those raw materials domestically, they can create a more robust and resilient economy that's less susceptible to those fluctuations.
It seems like this downstream processing strategy could address multiple challenges at the same time.
It could.
Boosting economic growth, creating jobs, and reducing reliance on exports of raw materials.
Yeah, it's a win-win-win.
It really is. Okay,
Right.
turning to the issue of gender inequality and violence against women.
All right.
We need to address both the immediate problem of violence, but also the underlying causes of that inequality.
It's a deep-rooted problem that requires a real fundamental shift in attitudes and behaviors.
Yeah.
Education plays a crucial role here.
Okay.
We need comprehensive education programs that start early, teaching boys and girls about respect, equality, and healthy relationships.
Okay.
And challenging patriarchal attitudes and promoting gender equality. This needs to be integrated into all aspects of society, from schools and workplaces to the media and community organizations.
So it's about changing hearts and minds, not just enacting law.
Exactly. But laws are important, too.
Right.
We need stronger legal frameworks, improved law enforcement, and robust support services for victims of violence.
Okay.
So this means ensuring access to legal aid counseling shelters and medical care.
Right.
And it also means holding perpetrators accountable, sending a clear message that this will not be tolerated.
So it's a multi-pronged approach involving education, legal reforms, and just stronger institutions to protect women and assure their rights.
Exactly. And the DPR RI, particularly Committee the Eighth, which focuses on social affairs, religion, and women's empowerment, they have a critical role to play in pushing for these changes and holding the government accountable.
Okay, let's move on to the issue of online gambling.
Right.
How can Indonesia kind of curb this growing problem and mitigate its impacts?
Well, a key strategy is to reduce access to those platforms.
Okay.
So things like restricting the sale of prepaid SIM cards, making it harder to create those anonymous accounts, and working with internet service providers to block access to those websites and apps.
So making it harder to gamble in the first place.
Exactly. And then we need to hit them where it hurts their finances.
Okay.
Cutting off the flow of money to these illegal operations that requires a close collaboration between different agencies to track, freeze, and seize funds associated with online gambling.
So really disrupting their business model.
Exactly. But enforcement is only one part of the equation.
Okay.
Prevention is equally crucial. We need public awareness campaigns that educate people about the dangers of online gambling, particularly young people who are more vulnerable to addiction. Highlighting those risks, the financial consequences, and the social costs that can be a powerful deterrent.
So getting the message out there, making people aware of the potential consequences.
Yes. And those campaigns need to be targeted and effective, reaching those most at risk.
Okay.
And stricter law enforcement is also essential. And we're not just talking about the operators of these sites, but also those who promote them, whether it's through advertising or social media.
Holding everyone in the chain accountable.
Exactly. And then we can't ignore the role of technology.
Okay.
You know, advanced technologies like AI, machine learning, big data analytics can be used to detect and prevent these activities, monitor suspicious transactions, and identify new platforms as they emerge.
So using technology to combat technology.
In a sense, yes. And the DPRI, particularly Committee Baron and Committee the Third, which focus on communication information technology and law enforcement, they have a critical role to play in driving these solutions. They need to make sure Indonesia has the laws, the regulations, and the resources to effectively combat this.
All right, so we had a roadmap for tackling online gambling.
Yeah.
What about those geopolitical tensions in the Taiwan Strait? What can Indonesia do to navigate that landscape and really promote peace and stability?
Well, first and foremost, Indonesia has to maintain its commitment to a neutral foreign policy.
Okay.
Taking sides would be disastrous.
So staying out of it, not getting caught in the crossfire.
Exactly. They need to walk this diplomatic tightrope, maintaining strong relationships with both China and the U.S. while advocating for a peaceful resolution.
Okay.
They need to be a voice of reason and moderation in a situation that's becoming increasingly polarized.
So playing the role of mediator, encouraging dialogue and de-escalation.
Exactly. And that's where the DPRI, particularly Committee, which focuses on foreign affairs and defense, can play a role. They can engage in what's called parliamentary diplomacy, building bridges between different factions and promoting that peaceful resolution.
Okay.
They can also push for the development of contingency plans in case the situation escalates, making sure Indonesia is prepared for any eventuality.
So diplomacy is key, but also preparedness.
Yeah.
Now, what about Indonesia's plan to retire coal-fired power plants and transition to renewable energy?
Right.
What are some strategies that can be employed to overcome those financial, regulatory, and infrastructural hurdles?
Well, attracting investment is crucial.
Okay.
Indonesia needs to create a more favorable regulatory environment for renewable energy projects, streamlining those permitting processes, offering financial incentives to encourage private sector investment.
So making it easier and more attractive for companies to invest in renewable energy.
Exactly. And they need to explore innovative financing mechanisms, things like green bonds or blended finance, to unlock that capital that's needed for this massive undertaking.
So thinking outside the box, finding new and innovative ways to fund these projects.
Yes, and they need to develop a clear and comprehensive roadmap for the retirement of those coal plants.
Okay.
This roadmap should outline the timeline, the cost, the specific steps involved, and the strategies for mitigating any negative impacts.
So a clear plan that provides certainty for investors, reduces risks, and ensures a smooth transition.
Exactly. And the DPRI, particularly Komisi the 6th and 12th, which focus on state-owned enterprises and energy, they have a crucial role in overseeing this process. They need to hold PLN accountable, that's the state-owned electricity company, for its role in developing renewable energy sources.
Okay.
They also need to monitor the implementation of that roadmap and push for the passage of a comprehensive renewable energy law to provide that clear legal framework.
So a combination of attracting investment, creating a clear roadmap, and strengthening that legal framework.
Exactly, but it's not just about the technical aspects.
Right.
We also need to think about the social implications of this transition.
Yeah.
What about the workers who are currently employed in the coal industry? How will their livelihoods be affected by this shift?
That's a really important point. We need to make sure that this transition is a just transition.
Absolutely.
One that doesn't leave people behind.
We need to provide retraining program support for those workers who are displaced from the coal industry, helping them acquire new skills, find new opportunities.
Okay.
The transition to a more sustainable future needs to be inclusive and equitable, benefiting all Indonesians.
So it's not just about transitioning to renewable energy.
Right.
It's about transitioning to a more sustainable and equitable society.
Exactly. It's about creating a future where economic growth, social justice, and environmental sustainability are all interconnected and mutually reinforcing.
Well, it's clear that Indonesia is really at a pivotal moment here, facing this convergence of challenges and opportunities.
Yeah.
These are complex issues with no easy answers.
For sure.
But by understanding those challenges, exploring the potential solutions, and engaging in an informed and constructive dialogue,
Right.
we can contribute to a better future for Indonesia. So we've spent quite a bit of time really digging into these complex challenges and potential solutions facing Indonesia in 2024.
Yeah, we have.
And, one thing that strikes me is that it's not just about government policies or what institutions do.
Right.
It's also about individual choices
Right.
and the power of, collective action.
You're absolutely right. Every decision, every action we take can contribute to shaping the future.
Yeah, so it's about being informed, staying engaged, and making those choices that align with our values.
Exactly. And using our voices, speaking out against injustice, advocating for positive change, holding those in power accountable.
Right.
Indonesia has a really rich history of social movements and activism that have driven progress in the past.
Yeah.
Tapping into that spirit of collective action is really important.
Yeah, it feels like Indonesia's at this really interesting point.
It does.
It's, a young nation with incredible potential, but it's facing some pretty defining choices right now.
Yeah, the decisions made today are going to resonate for generations to come.
For sure. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Indonesia in 2024, we want to leave you with a few questions to think about.
Okay.
What role do you see Indonesia playing on the global stage in the coming years? What are the most critical issues that demand attention, and what solutions offer the most promise?
And most importantly, what actions can you take as an individual to contribute to a brighter future for Indonesia?
Yeah, we encourage you to keep exploring these topics, engage in those conversations, and use your voice to make a difference.
The future isn't predetermined. It's being shaped right now, and we all have a part to play in that.
That's a great point. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving for a better world.